Hello, everyone, and welcome to the McGuckin Group podcast. We are always thrilled to bring you stories, to bring you perspective, and to bring you the voice of incredible leaders around the world. I am joining you today from Guadalajara and super excited to go and start working with a client, but to be with you today as well this morning. Before I do that, I want to start this conversation by introducing you to my dear friend, Art Tan. Art, I'm going to have you introduce yourself, and then we're going to dive into the conversation.
Sure. I'm Art Tan. I'm actually based here in Manila. I've I'm ancient. I've been in this electronic semiconductor industry for over 4 decades. Starting off in semiconductor, working as a test engineer to applications, product, process, design, and then migrating up the food chain, and then become part of an EMS company based out of the Philippines, but now was able to expand globally. So I've spent 20 years in the semiconductor side of the fence, and another 22 years here in the EMS side. So I'm technically a geek, but they've allowed me to lead this company. And so I've been doing this for the last 22 years. I'm an engineer by training, and I like a lot of stuff. I travel the world and read and all that thing that makes everybody settled and grounded through the year. So I'm happy to be here and to be able to participate here and probably, hopefully, shed some light into IMI.
Yes, that was my first question. Just
Uh-huh.
for our audience, Art, tell us a little bit about IMI.
Well, IMI is Integrated Microelectronics Inc. was originally it celebrated its 43rd year of existence. It's been a while. It's one of the pioneers of contract manufacturing in the Philippines. So it started in 1980, and during that time, when the first wave of outsourcing happened from the United States, it actually went to Asia. And during that time, it was quite limited as far as areas of where to go. And one of the areas where actually there were only three pretty much friendly nation to the United States that they felt safe about their IP. They felt safe about the technology that they were going to bring, and that there was synergy with the U.S. market together with that country. So the first wave actually happened between Taiwan and South Korea, and then as those economies got better, the cost pressures made them look into the neighboring countries in order to see where they could diversify. And the Philippines was one of those that they actually, the Philippines, for the viewers who are not aware, it's one of the unique countries in Southeast Asia where I believe we're the only predominantly Christian Catholic country by religion in Southeast Asia. Our history was formed by 300 years of colonization of the Spaniards, and thereafter was liberated by the Americans, and we were under the Americans for about 40 years before we were able to get our own independence. And part of that 40 years was what our education system was actually formed and institutionalized by the Americans. And that's why English is a very, very common language in the Philippines. And that kind of opened it up for us, because when they were looking for places in order to bring processes and technology, it was very easy to bring it to the Philippines because there was no translation required. Everybody was able to communicate in English and understand the manuals and all of that process. And so that was the beginning. And IMI was one of those original in 1980 when that happened. So since then, a majority of American companies actually built their assembly, test, packaging capabilities in the Philippines. Texas Instrument, Intel, Motorola at the time, and Analog Devices, most of which are still in the Philippines. And then IMI started as a Philippine-based, a couple of entrepreneurs. One of them actually sought the partnership with Ayala Corporation, which is one of the oldest. We're celebrating 190 years this year, and one of the largest conglomerate of the Philippines. And they saw the value of industrialization, of manufacturing, electronics, to what it can do for the country, and decided to then participate and invest in that. So over the years, I wasn't there when it was incorporated in 1980. I was still in college, but after which I joined them after working for an American firm, American Microsystems Inc. I transferred, went back to the Philippines, and then joined IMI and led it since 2001 to this day. So what started as a general contract manufacturing company with a couple of factories in the Philippines and several thousand operators, we were able to then transform it to what it is now. I think we're ranked 18th largest EMS company in the world, and about 8th or 7th largest automotive electronic company in the world. So that's part of the growth rate and the success of the company over the years.
Yeah. Now tell me, what size are you just now in terms of?
Last year it was a flat year. I think we closed $1.2 billion in revenue.
Yeah. I remember when I worked for Jabil, when I left, they were 27 billion in revenue with 250,000 employees. But one of my first incredible clients was Kimball Electronics. And the CEO came to me and said, Audrey, we're 500 million in revenue and we want to grow to 1 billion. And we need help with talent strategy and we need help with leadership. And I just saw their earnings. They've had incredible growth. I think they just announced at 1.8 billion. And largely it was down to the quality of their leaders, the quality of their talent and their culture. And so when you said, that IMI was about 1.2 billion, it really made me think about Kimball. I saw you smiling, and we worked with Don Sharon, who was the CEO, but God rest his soul, he passed away quite recently. But he's one of the best leaders that I've ever had the opportunity to work with in the EMS industry.
Fantastic. We one of the comparable companies that we always look up to is Kimball. So you're yes, because they actually operate majority of their market share in the same space that IMI does, and so we actually look up to Kimball.
We should talk more about how we help them get from 500 to 1.8 and still be in the top 10 small best companies to work for in the US, still have all of the accolades from their customers who, one of the processes we used is we said to the OEMs, why do you give Kimball more share of wallet than their competitors? And they said, simply, it's because of their culture, and it's simply because we trust their leadership. Because
that's very important.
Yeah, we all have the same footprint, the same machinery, the same access to supply chain.
Yes.
All of those things put us on a level playing field, but what makes us different is this investment in leaders.
Well, both. I mean, the leadership and also actually the people
Yes.
that actually migrate to me. I've always, I mean, over the years, I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of fantastic people, really, really talented and competent and capable. Finding an overlap where the competency meets the requirement of the company, the talent and the capability is at the level where it complements the rest of the team, is not a given. You can have 5 Michael Jordans in one basketball team, but nobody wants to go outside to put the ball in. They all they want the ball. And so then you can't win that way. At the end of the day, you have 5 great players, but no championship. And so I think the value, the critical value of the leadership is really to be able to create not not one violinist or one great pianist, but an orchestra that actually makes music. And I think
love
that's
that.
the critical point.
I
And
love
being
that.
able to determine, right? Because you can have, you know, you may, somebody may come across and it's fantastic violinist, but you got 5 violins already in the team. What you need is a cellist. And so finding the cellist, because adding one more violin is not going to make the music better, even though they're great violinists. And who will see that, right? I mean, that's the challenge of the leadership, because somebody has to go look at the whole landscape, what the audience, in this case, if you're playing in an orchestra, relates to, you know, and then be able to build that music that matches that requirement. So it's a balancing act. It's not just getting the right people at the right time. It's actually getting a group of people who wants to do the right thing with a shared vision with everybody, including the leadership.
Yes, I love that metaphor of the orchestra, and we call it complementary leadership. And
Yeah.
and you know, to continue on your metaphor, if you have 4 violinists and you think you need something else, you have to be able to quickly name what you need. And what we do is we leverage science and we leverage data. I grew up in the EMS industry, and I was trained to do things efficiently with data, but also with empathy. And so if we can have data that can help us get to what do we need for the orchestra and how does that connect to what our audience wants to hear, not only does it help us go faster, it contributes to higher revenue. It contributes to higher EBITDA. It contributes to higher retention, which is all great news for our shareholders.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it creates an environment that actually makes it easier to scale. But the background there, and you know, when you mentioned about the success of Kimball and that of Jabil, and for IMI, I'm happy to say that I believe, anyway, from at least my personal experience, a lot of it is of course operational and focused on the company and the people, the leadership in it, and the execution part. But a big portion of it is the support that the company and the leadership gets also from its shareholders.
Yes.
Because if there's a diversity in their goal as to your or the management's role, and that of what the company needs to achieve and what it wants to do, then it becomes dysfunctional and makes it difficult.
Yes.
And I think why is it that, as you mentioned, everybody has access to the same equipment, everybody has access to the processes, everybody has access to the market. But why is it that there are these companies that are able to outperform everybody else? And I think the variables, the unknown variables behind the scenes contribute a lot to that.
So let's explore those variables, right? Because if we have leaders listening to this conversation, I'm sure they're curious about what on earth are the variables? How do I get my hands on them? How do I integrate them? And how do I be one of those companies that outperform the same people in my field?
Yeah. Well, it carries on, you know, one of the things that maybe because of my background that, you know, I've always went into a meeting with my executive team with the mindset, always with the mindset that I'm a peer and not any more better than any of them. In fact, I see them to be much more experts in their specific field. And so I see myself as being able to then analyze all these data points and then create a story where at least we're able to identify missing pieces, if there are any, and also highlight the pieces that we already have. Because individually, if you talk to somebody in operations, they see the world from that lens. If you see somebody from the commercial side, they see the world from the customer's lens. But the reality of what the world is actually a combination of all of these views. And I think the challenge is to be able to stand back and actually pragmatically and with full self-awareness, this is the view. It may not be pretty, but you have to accept it, you know? And so that's the part I think is critical. And some of the variables that are not done. Strategically, everybody goes through the process. I mean, you hire a McKinsey, you hire a BCG, and then they come in and they do an analysis of your companies, on your swing. Then they take a swath of the market, how everybody else is doing, what you have, what your weaknesses, what your strength, derived from all of these views, and then they compile it together. So everybody does it. I mean, everybody goes through that strategic process. Again, my question is, why is it that not everybody outperforms? So then they go, hey, wait a minute. The formula was set. The story was right. You just didn't execute. It's easiest way out, right? You didn't execute. Now, but I one of the things I learned as I grew older is everybody, when you know, life cycle says that everybody thinks that all the things that's happening in the world is because of a single variable, just like when we were in high school, right? Yes. We add one chemical and then the color changes, and therefore, see the variable. You add one variable again, and so then you wake up into the real world thinking that I gotta find that one variable, right? And then so this I think one of the values that I learned early on in my career was I was exposed to Dr. Deming and the principle of multivariate analysis that's done using design of experiments, understanding that small variances in different pockets could be the main variable why it's not consistent. And going back to what you said, data, right? If you have very limited view of data, then definitely your conclusion will be very, very limited as well. The metaphor I use when I do all of these analysis and strategy with my team is that as a carpenter, and this is not something I came up with, this is something that was passed on to me. As a carpenter, and the only thing that you have in your toolbox is a hammer, every problem is a nail.
Yes.
So our role is to make sure that we have a rich toolbox, and not only having it available, but having everybody understand how these tools can be used, and then when to apply it, and it's appropriate, and when you need to use a different tool because it's not appropriate. And that's not easy.
I know, and I love that metaphor. And if I could try and tie all that together, Art, one of the things that we subscribe to is the variable in outperforming your competitors is leadership. Also, leadership can come in many different forms, but we find that the leadership that are winning in today's world are the leaders that lead with empathy, are vulnerable, are courageous, and if they have strong self-awareness, because you can have a rich tool set, but if you don't know how to use that tool set, or you don't know what your superpowers are, you might pick out the wrong tool. And so the work we do with leaders is we get them to focus on who am I at the core, and how can I be authentic, and yet how can I inspire additional performance? How can I inspire people to come to work and show up because they want to, because they feel part of a journey? How can I inspire people to be part of the orchestra? And there's ways to do that, leveraging data. We help organizations go faster because we use leadership data. We use human capital data. We use all sorts of data that helps us go faster. And so tying all of that together, I double down on what we subscribe to is leadership matters, and it matters big time.
Absolutely. And on that premise, and then you touched on it, called empathy, because that's actually bravely used by everybody. A lot of the leaders say that they empathize, and yet when they go into a meeting, they already have an answer. They just want everybody to say yes. It's like the world revolves, and that the center of the universe is all in their hands, and they're the ones who's going to prescribe all the solutions that's available in the world, which is not true, and it's never is.
Yes.
And that's why, for me, the true test of a leader is not in its ability to be able to solve a problem. It's not in its ability to be able to delegate, which is another one that's important to all these leaders. It's not their ability to have the authority or to mandate the direction. To me, more importantly, is how much influence do they really have as a person, not as a leader. If they were not the CEO, would these people do what they think is right or what you want because they believe in what you are saying? You have the credibility, and that you've established a sense of trust for them to go out of their way or to do something that is actually not comfortable for them. That level of influence is so strong, and that's how you get, that's how you get people share when they say we have a shared vision, we have a culture of empowerment, the reality there is just how much influence, because people, when you want the other person to be well, you don't think because he's gonna compliment you. You just want to, because you care. And that is the most difficult thing for leaders to actually, in my mind, attain, especially when you have 21,000 people working for you. Now, how do you influence 21,000, right?
Yes.
Or 500,000, 250,000 from Jabil, right? Yeah, and yet you have to be very careful, because the easy answer is, well, you incentivize them, be it by paying them more bonus, more money, by giving them more benefits. But that's just so simple. People misconstrue that when you wake up in the morning and you show up at work, primarily is the mindset that you have of what you're going to do that day is show up is because you want that paycheck, or do you want to change the world?
Yeah, and I know that we share similar philosophies, Art. One of our principles is people deserve to feel connected into something bigger than themselves. But in order to have them feel connected, the leader has to show vulnerability. And in
Exactly.
order to show vulnerability, that takes courage.
Yeah,
And in order to
absolutely.
be courageous, to show that vulnerability, you have to look inward. And one of the way we actually teach that because we think it's a differentiator. And
Oh,
when
it
we
is.
at art, one of the things that we ask is, what was it like for you growing up? You know, what did you learn from your parents? What are your
Yeah.
values? Because at the very beginning of this conversation, we talked about storytelling.
Yes.
And, and leaders need to be able to tell their life story. And that includes highs and lows. And so, you know, I'd love to spend a few minutes Art really asking you, what was it like for you growing up?
My life story is quite a feat. I mean, I grew up in a middle class company family. We didn't have a lot, but then my parents were always making sure that that there was enough for us to be. I grew up with five of us as siblings, and my mother, and God bless her, I think she was a dominant teacher in how I see the world. What makes you happy does not necessarily mean but how much you have. It is the environment that you're in, the family values that you share, the time that you're able to spend together as a family. So small things was a big deal, but we were all happy. So I grew up that way. I went to college in an engineering school. I was a scholar. I was an athletic scholar, mind you. I was not an academic scholar. I was a jock. I was a jock. So I got through school, through engineering school, because I knew how to kick a ball very well. So I was a football scholar and did well enough that the school kept me on a scholarship just to play for the varsity team until I graduated from college. Um, did not have fantastic grades, but I knew at the end that I had to go be differentiated as an engineer because definitely my grades were not. So I decided at that point, and I don't know if that was just my upbringing, just to create something unique. I actually studied foreign language, and in order to just separate myself from all the other applicants, I took up basic German because I was an engineer, and I figured there was only two countries in the world that would hire really good engineers. One would be America. I got that down, but and the other one was Germany. So I better learn Deutsch. So I took up basic Deutsch in order to. So during the interview process, when I was looking for a job, that was the unique thing. I got interviewed in every application just because they wanted to know how a Filipino Chinese in the Philippines was going to speak. Why do you know German? So that allowed me at least to get to the level to be interviewed, right?
Yeah.
And lo and behold, right? I got hired by an American firm, American Microsystems, that was opening up a test facility in the Philippines. One of those surges of American companies that wanted to do their back end assembly of OSAT in the Philippines, and they hired me as a junior test engineer. I worked in the Philippines under that company for about a year, and lo and behold, they transferred me to the U.S. And long story short, I worked for that company for 20 years. And I started as a test engineer that was pulled out of the Philippines. I was the first Filipino ever to be transferred out of the Philippines to the United States by this American company. But since then, I got to a level of a director. And not, I don't know if I was just because the token guy, but I was the only non-white in the whole board. But I ended up finishing as a director and ended up heading back to the Philippines as the guy who ran all of Asia, Japan, and rest of the world. in terms of engineering, design, and marketing and sales.
Like,
So that's how I started. I mean, it's been a long journey.
yes, but you know, Art, we could have put your resume on the screen, or we could have pulled up your LinkedIn. But when you tell a story about, you know, your mom and getting to sixth grade, and when you tell your story of family values, and when you tell your story of curiosity around German, we get to know more about you as a leader than we do reading your LinkedIn. And so one of the things that we do with all of our clients is we teach leaders how to be vulnerable, how to tell their story so that they can connect with their people, so that they have higher retention, which leads to higher revenue, which leads to better EBITDA. And so that's how we draw the breadcrumbs.
I think that's really being able to be vulnerable is important, because that actually is the way to connect to other people, because that they see you more as a peer than somebody that doesn't understand their faith.
I know. On this topic of vulnerability, what's been your biggest mistake from a leadership perspective, Art, as you reflect on your very illustrious career? Where did you mess up?
Oh, I messed up. I mean, I messed up a lot, but I think I messed up. I have not yet messed up in my mind, at least, and I think I have a lot of people that made that. All the mistakes I made were because I was trying to do something better for the common good, for the people that work for me or the company, right? And I overweight on the people. So if there was a fault in my leadership, and I say this because of experience, is that I'm not a good CEO because I overweight on people. I think the business in any environment would reward a CEO that doesn't overweight on people, but overweight on the business. And I think I'm not that person. And so that to me is my failure. And in a way, a failure in terms of business, but you know what? I sleep well at night.
But I wonder if I could challenge you and tussle with you a little bit.
Sure.
Because, you know, I feel like really what we're trying to get to is the outcomes and the impact. And if you have good results, and if you have good top line, and if you have good innovation, and if you have good EBITDA, and you have good market share, and all of those things, and you get there through people, I don't know if
the things that you mentioned are lagging indicators, right? They're a result of.
Yes.
They're not the driver, but they're a result of.
Exactly.
And the people is one variable. That's why if you do a balanced scorecard, you have the financial reports, you have the operational, you have the customers, and then you have people. And then you have to go put metrics on all of them, and then that's what constitutes the balance. Of course, and the rationale for that is that the financial part of it is the lagging indicator. It means these are the results of your operation, of your customer base, how you treat with it, your processes, and how you deal with your people. So if you get a fantastic report at the result, that doesn't necessarily equate that the leading indicators are all correct.
Yes,
I've seen it, and so you know, and that's the reason why if that was true, then why is it that Kimball is always voted as the best company to work for, and not all these other companies that actually have the same performance financially, and even better results than Kimball? See?
So what would you say?
that's my argument to the point that the only way, if you are able to then rationalize that you have empathy from the people that you overweight on that you will get automatically the financial results that will drive that. It's just one variable. But so
Exactly.
it's a matter of which one, as a leader, do you focus on, right? Or do you overweight on? And each one will do it depending on their background, their disposition, how they were raised, all these things that you just mentioned. Because they inevitably people, if you believe in Malcolm Gladwell's book, right? At the end of the day, you can read all the data, but then you decide on your gut feel.
I know. I remember I worked for a CEO that was making a huge amount of investment in talent and leadership and people. And I started to come to him with all the regression analysis around, here's how we're going to measure it. And he said, Audrey, I don't really give a shit. I don't give a shit. Because intrinsically, I know that this is the right thing to do. I know I'm going to have value. I know what the impact is. Don't waste your time.
Yeah. Believe me, there's more of that than actually, understanding and believing that I don't have the right answer. Please show me what the indicators are and what the numbers are, so that we have at least a fighting chance that whatever we decide on actually has some level of success that's going to be associated with it.
Exactly.
So true. And that's the thing. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I maybe I'm just a little bit, because like I said, the shared value and the shared vision of your shareholders to what the company's vision is and to what its people are aligned with has to be together in one plane. Any diversion of that, where now, as we know, a company that is driven on a quarterly report goes nowhere. But if you have a shareholder who only looks at your quarterly stock price and then requires changes, if that doesn't move in 2 quarters or in 3 quarters or in 1 year, right? Then you have a dysfunction, because then you're now like steering, you're like somebody is measuring you on how fast you can run from 0 to 100 meters.
Yes.
When you're trying to run a marathon.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
So there has to be alignment there. Either they believe, the people that is with you believe that the goal is to reach 26 miles, or and then have the trust that you may be fast in 1 mile, but you got to slow down on another mile because of the terrain. The market changes. The whole economy moves. Trade war happens. COVID happens, and so on and so forth. So you have to be able to do that. But at the end of the day, everybody should agree, we're only going to measure after 26 miles. So it's either we're going the right direction. Yes, we're going to check that. And we're still going in the right way. Yes, we check that. We're still able to have the financial capability to last 26 miles. Yes. But if you tell me that every quarter that you're going to have to be 9.2 seconds, 100 meters for 26 miles, how do you do that?
Indeed. And, we've talked a little bit about Kimball. When we first started working with them, the results weren't showing in the first quarter, nor were they showing in the second quarter, or the third quarter, or actually even the fourth quarter. And it wasn't until 2 or 3 years later that we started to see the impact. But let me summarize our beautiful conversation, Art. And I think the first headline is context matters. meaning you have to scan your own environment, your own personal leadership environment, your business environment, your financial, your operations and your execution. Context matters. Also, leadership matters. And then
Does.
the bottom line is really informed decision making to
Yeah,
decide
yeah.
if this, then that. And we call that branching. If we're here and we want to be here, then we need to do this. So that last piece around informed decision making by the CEO, and how fast do you want to go?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's a culmination also of not just yourself, but also for your team. How fast do they want to go? Because you might want to go one speed, but then everybody else says this is the different speed that we want to go. Now that's the time for you for self-reflection. Am I asking more than what is capable, or am I need to then change the culture? Do I change the vision? Do I change the mission of how we're going to be able to achieve this? Because in the end of the day, even if I say we're going to the moon and everybody says, I don't even want to go to the corner store, then it's going to be quite difficult, right?
Exactly. Art. I always
Yes.
ask this question when I'm with leadership teams, if we've been through a workshop or a conversation, I ask them to tell me, what is the one word that comes to your mind on the basis of this conversation?
One word. Wow. I think trust.
I love that. I love that. You know, my one word is alignment.
Ah,
You know, we haven't said that word out loud, but a lot of what we've talked about is around alignment of values and alignment of leadership, alignment, are we going to the moon or not? And so, but I love years of trust. Art,
well,
thank you for
yeah.
joining us. I know you're sitting in your beautiful garden in the Philippines. I'm with one of my favorite clients here in Guadalajara, USI.
Oh
where you
yes, I know USI.
Oh, you do? Yeah.
Oh yes,
So
yes.
they, I'm getting ready to head into a workshop with their executive team. So we're on different
Well,
parts of the
I
world.
just want to share, I'll share something with you. I don't think it's generally public knowledge yet, but I think it's official enough internally that it's been posted in our website. So there is going to be a leadership change in IMI after our annual stockholders meeting in April. I will be stepping down from the company. Yes, after 22 years. And so and like I said, that they have to have alignment. I think we're come to the point where the shareholders and myself have come to the point that we need to review the direction that IMI wants to go, and they then decided that we should take a different path. And so I support that, because I myself have my own views, and so that's the change that's going to happen in April. I don't know if this nullifies now the whole interview process.
Oh,
But I
well,
want you to know
congratulations
that.
on whatever's next in your journey.
Absolutely. I feel like, even though I am in my 60s, it's just amazing the wealth of knowledge that I've been able to be taught and absorb by having been exposed to people like yourself, the different CEOs that I've had to work with, the companies that all these Fortune 500 companies that we directly work with, and having had the time of seeing the transition happen, not just to our company, but to my customers as well, and to my peers. And to me, that's a wealth of knowledge that I will always take with me.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing your perspective. It's been a pleasure. Art, we will talk soon, I promise you.
I look forward and
Ah.
enjoy Guadalajara. I believe if it has to me the best restaurants even compared to Mexico, because I think that the people and the location of being on a plateau it just gives it an absolute advantage. So enjoy
Exactly.
it and easy on the tequila.
Ah, yes. Indeed. Well, thank
All right.
you. Thank you to all our
Okay.
listeners. You can follow us at www.mcguckengroup.com and we will speak to you soon.